Planned Parenthood sex seminars for high school English students, fake Nazi salute drives more fake news, and schools helping kids change gender without parental consent. Next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Every week we cover those stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the nation. Greetings to all of our longtime listeners, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Never miss an episode, it's completely free. Coming up later, we'll be talking to our international journalist, Alex Newman, on an incredible story out of Minnesota where 3 federal judges will decide whether public schools are allowed to help children transition to a different sex through hormones and surgery without parental approval. This actually happened, so stick around for that. But first, I want to bring in Katie Petrick for the top education stories of the week. Welcome, Katie.
Hi. So today we actually have, speaking of parents not being consulted about anything, we have parents in Florida who are rightfully angry after they found out a Planned Parenthood sex education video on consent was shown during an English class. Seniors in English literature at Pineview School in Sarasota, Florida were shown how do you know if someone wants to have sex with you as part of a presentation by a counselor from Safe Place and Rape Crisis Center. Now, this is an organization that partners with the school district for sex education. And the video asks what consent means, and it shows multiple same-sex couples kissing. It talks about being drunk and or high, and about getting some super sweet action. And so this video was shown. Parents weren't given an option of opting their students out of seeing this video because they didn't even know it was being shown. The administrators didn't know it was being shown, and now we have outrage.
Asking for consent doesn't have to be awkward. Asking for consent can actually be kind of sexy.
Want to show me your bedroom?
Show me where you want me to touch you.
Do you want to help me take these clothes off?
What this is marketing sex to your kids. This is not about consent. It's about making sure English students in, what grade is this?
This is senior literature.
Senior literature. That English students get to see men kissing each other. This is a way of normalizing the sexual attitudes, mores, and worldview that the government schools want you to have and that these outside agencies want to bring into the school. And no one's being asked about this. They have completely preempted the parents on this. And you say parents are rightly upset. I'm at the point now where you just have to assume as a mom or a dad this stuff is happening. And notice the insidiousness of this. It's not in health class. It's not in a biology class. They're slipping this into parts of lectures, math courses, English courses, as a way of pushing an agenda that the schools are 100% complicit with.
Yeah, and the district spokeswoman, Tracy Beaker, she went to the local news outlets and said that they learned about the video from the teachers and a parent. And she did acknowledge that the video is inappropriate based on curriculum guidelines and stress it was not approved or sanctioned by the school district. So the school district is automatically trying to turn it back on this other organization that they've been using for more than 15 years. And this organization, clearly, it's a Planned Parenthood video, and they have more videos out there. So who knows how many different videos actually have been shown over the years.
Yeah, and this has happened way too often all across the country and almost basically virtually all 50 states to be able to argue that this is just rogue teachers. What do you think, why do you think so many rogue teachers feel that they can bring this level of irrelevant, out of context sexuality into the kids' classrooms? Classrooms like English that have nothing to do with this. Why are so many teachers doing this if they don't get trained how to do it? If they haven't been sold by the district, by the universities that accredit them, that they haven't been sold that a big part of what they're supposed to do is normalize alternative sexualities now. And so the schools now have this default, right? Everything about our school sort of lends itself to this kind of radical partnership through data mining, this kind of co-opting typical classroom learning for social values learning, psychosocial learning. And then when teachers do it, wink, wink, and somebody gets upset, we have a one fault to step back, right? Well, it was them, not us. They should have told us, and grudgingly will admit that this was probably inappropriate until we do it again next time. And again, what's completely already taken as status quo is that we are not really required to contact parents or consult with parents or seek parental permission. It's easier to apologize to parents after we do something that we get caught doing rather than make them actual partners, because When you partner with the parents, you would never get this Planned Parenthood related garbage in the schools, which is why you don't partner with parents anymore. You partner with radical sexual entities who are going to sexualize kids' English classes.
Yeah, and we have a teacher who was actually trying to do her job in a Baltimore school, and she got punched in the face. Last Wednesday, a video went viral showing a student throwing a punch at a female science teacher at Frederick Douglass High School. The student was fighting with another student, and then you can see in the video, the teacher had said something, and so the student goes off on the teacher and says, "Don't effing get smart with me," straight up. And she had punched the teacher, and the teacher says, "I didn't get smart with you," and then the student leaves the room and the teacher follows. So this is what's happening in Baltimore schools.
This is really what happens when you default to student-centered classrooms. The biggest, dumbest argument that I've heard in education over the last 20 years is we must have student-centered classrooms. That doesn't mean we make student learning the highest priority. It means we defer to the students, right? We are teachers, but our job is not really to teach. Our job is to facilitate. We want kids teaching each other. We want to empower kids to seize their own education, which is utterly impossible. The idea that you're going to have classrooms where the teachers just sort of sit and watch or just help with technology or make a suggestion here and there, it does not lead to learning. It leads to chaos. And it leads to a kind of entitlement in the classroom where the students feel like they get to dictate to teachers all the time. I can't tell you how many students I've had at the university level who were education majors, not surprisingly, who will come up to me after class the first couple weeks and say, well, Dr. Pesta, I noticed that you've been grading my journals in red ink, excuse me. And we learn in the education department that that's kind of hostile. Maybe you should not, Dr. Pesta, you stand at the lectern and talk to us rather than put us in a circle, right? And that creates a dynamic in the classroom where that's an equal balance of power. And my response to that is, look, I have 13 years of graduate school. If I don't know this material better than you, then I shouldn't be here at all. And if you're going to argue to me that with all that experience, being hired to be your professor, that I'm supposed to sit down and become one of you rather than lead you, the classroom's going to fall to pieces, right? I can't tell you how many of our university classes are done this way, where the professors sit down in the circle and kind of keep quiet, let the kids talk to each other. And it doesn't work at the university level. It's certainly not going to work in high school. And the fact is that last thing I'll say about this, before I turn it back to you, is the student comment and the teacher's reaction is a stunning insight into the modern public school.
Daniel! What you talking about? Daniel! Get smart with me.
I didn't get
straight up.
Daniel! I thought she said that I was getting smart with her.
This kid who feels that the teacher, with all of her experience, and these are a black kid and a black teacher, the teacher believes that the student believes that she has the right to dictate to the teacher what she will say. Don't use something a mother would say, right? Something a mother would say. Don't you sass me. Don't you talk back to me or I'm going to slap you around, right? The kid says that to the teacher, and the teacher's response upon being punched in the face, I didn't sass you. Now, I get it. She was in shock, I'm sure, from having received the slap. But the response is, I didn't sass. It's not, you have no, regardless, I am your teacher. Right? You have no right to censor my language, and you have no right to physically touch me or slap me. No anger, no sense of who's really in charge here. Kind of like I didn't sass you, implying that maybe if I had sassed you, you'd be justified in punching me. And again, it was a bang thing, but I think it's a really nasty insight into what we've allowed our classrooms to become.
Well, and I can back you up on this because being an education major, I sat in the Barney circles many a time, and it's exactly what happens. The professors come into the room, and it's which group is presenting some chapter in a book that none of us read. Which group is presenting? The teacher sits down, listens to the presentation. The students in the room don't pay attention to what's happening, and the rest of us won't pay attention when everyone else is up there, even though we're all supposed to be learning from one another because that's what this student learning is all about. But it goes to exactly what you said. I've been in those classrooms, so I know exactly how it goes.
You've been in my classes too, which don't do that. When I've asked the kids are honest. These students are honest. When I ask them about I call it the Barney circle, right? The Barney circle of learning, where everybody hugs a lot and nobody does anything. Or when you put these kids in their small groups, what inevitably happens, and the kids will tell you it's true, you get a group of 5 students together, you waste 20 minutes of class time where these kids are supposed to be talking to each other. And then you ask the kids afterward what happened. And what happens is what? 4 of them do nothing. One bespectacled overachiever does all the work, right? And makes it was you, makes the presentation, right? So it's a complete waste of time. And it seems to me that if we're going to take that premise at face value, that students from 2 years old to 22-year-old don't really need the interference of teachers, that they learn best when they're left to their own devices, then what you have is no longer a school. It's ignorant, blind people leading ignorant, blind people. It's the blind leading the blind. And social promotion, right? We grade you not on the quality of your work, the amount of your work, the integrity of your work, the intellectuality of your work. We grade you on collaboration. Everybody was in the same, everybody participated in the circle. Nobody learned anything, but collectively you all get A's.
Yeah, well, and you can look, because of this specific school, it's the Baltimore School District, it's Frederick Douglass High School. We actually had done a story with Alex Newman on this over a year ago now, talking about Baltimore schools and how bad they really are. Frederick Douglass was one of the high schools that didn't even produce one student who was proficient in math or reading. Not even one.
Not one student. And if Frederick Douglass has to be rolling over in his grave, this prominent African-American intellectual, a Republican, who strove to rise above the shackles of oppression by educating himself. The school we named after him, God knows whose name we pulled off. Certainly, Douglass is absolutely worthy of that. One wonders whose name we pulled down off of it. Probably used to be the Thomas Jefferson School. Nevertheless, it is highly ironic in a primarily black school with black teachers that this kind of disrespect and disregard for learning tells us something else too. Maybe we should spend a little less time on the sociological aspects of this and a little more time on the educational aspects of this for better results.
Yeah, let's go to another high school where it's actually in our home state of Wisconsin here at Baraboo High School, where there's outrage going on because a photo emerged this week of a group of high school boys making what appears to be a Nazi salute. And you can see the photo there, and I'll let you judge for yourself what the boys are doing in the photo. Now, the photo was taken back in May by a professional photographer and a parent of one of the students, and it's showing about 60 young men standing on the steps of the Sauk County Courthouse, and it was before their prom. That's why they're all in their nice little tuxedos. Well, about 30 of the students may be giving the Nazi salute, and one in the front row is giving the OK sign, which apparently now is associated with white power movements, which I never knew that was a thing. But the photo just went viral now, even though it was taken back in May, because a reporter from the Young Turks, if you know that outlet, they found it and they put it on Twitter. So I want to get your reaction as to what you see.
Well, and the news now, the immediate reaction from the global media was, see, there are Nazis in every school. American schools are the Hitler Jugend, right? And the reality is that now that time has gone by, a couple of days, we've now found out what? That the students don't know who the Nazis are. That one student sadly pointed out, well, how could it be about the Nazis? They don't teach us World War II anymore in our history classes. Exactly right. One of the things your kids in the American history curriculum of this country no longer learn about is World War II. Heaven forbid we talk about a war where America comes off looking like a heroic country, right? So we don't teach that one anymore. Guarantee you, they spend more time lecturing the kids about Vietnam than they ever spend on World War II. But look, realistically, these kids don't know anything about Nazism. I bet you not one of those kids can tell you 2 meaningful facts about Nazism. And they more or less said so, that they didn't know what they were being asked to do. And the photographer came out and said that I asked them to do it. Go ahead.
Well, the photographer, his name is Pete Gust. He's not just a dad. He's also a former social studies teacher.
Oh, yes.
So this is a part that I listened to his different comments for the local media. And he said he told the boys to wave goodbye to their parents like they're going off to prom, because what he does as a photographer for weddings, it's kind of like the groomsmen do that whole see you later sort of thing. And he had put this photo up back in May, and no one said anything. Nothing happened until the right person
Well,
at
right.
the right time gets that photo, and then all the fake outrage ensues.
And that's its fake outrage, right? So the boys themselves did not consider it a Nazi salute. Many of them didn't know what that meant. They had no historical history or context for who the Nazis were. The photographer said he directed them to do it, not from a Nazi perspective, right? He was getting them to engage in a little bit of collective goofiness that he does in typical pictures. All this is out there now, but it doesn't change the narrative. The narrative is this is proof of white supremacism and Nazism. And there, my friends, is the rub. The American left needs Nazis. The American left is not anti-Nazi. The American left needs there to be the illusion of Nazis. Because under the guise of accusing every one of their opponents of being a Nazi, they get to push for more and more radical unmaking of the Constitution, more and more radical, almost martial law approaches to speech, to language, to guns. This is what happens here. There is a collection of people in this country, progressives. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a classic example of this, of well-funded George Soros organizations like the Young Turks, whose job it is to see a Nazi behind every unfortunate turn of events, a Nazi behind every joke, a Nazi behind every school prank. The American left needs Nazis more than the Nazi Party needs Nazis. Without Nazis, there is no excuse for the radical rewrite of American culture that is going on in the name of progressivism.
And when you get them with that mindset and get this fake outrage going, it's how you get in this small community of Baraboo, you get people uniting for a rally at the courthouse, you get talks going on at the school board meetings, you get the police involved with this. They're investigating along with the school, and some people are calling for all of these students to be suspended or expelled.
Listen to what Katie just said very carefully. The police department of Baraboo, Wisconsin, is investigating a bunch of idiot preteens standing there like this, or young teens standing there like this. It's an investigation. What law was broken? The school district is investigating this. What law was broken? You may not like it. You may think it's certainly uncalled for. You could think that the symbolism is all wrong. But what kind of national and local investigations, legal investigations, are actually warranted by something, if at the worst case, is just stupid?
And they're trying also to impact whether these boys can get into colleges. This is coming from Stephanie Niles, president of the National Association for College Admission Counseling. They're actually saying that this could impact their ability to get into a college.
And that's because progressives run the colleges, right? I guarantee you, if they all took a knee and wore Kaepernick jackets, they would be recruited by colleges, right? Kaepernick jerseys. This is the problem. The progressives set the narrative on this. And so if it looks remotely like something offensive, this now, and to simply do this now, apparently, or is it this?
It's that.
This.
Yeah.
To do this now is apparently a symbol of white supremacy. So if you're doing this, oh, it's a covert, clever way, isn't it, of doing this without actually getting busted for doing it, right? The beer goggles that you just put on.
Here we go.
This is the problem, right? And so progressives now, anything that looks even, that can be twisted some way into something that is going to benefit their radical progressive agenda, think about what's had to happen here, right? Forces on the international level, the national level, the state level, the local city level, the school level are all proactively reacting about this. We need more education. We need more money. We need more discipline for these kids. We may have to ruin these kids' future. We got to get local law enforcement involved. This is a huge comment on our culture, and it's just a bunch of silly boys, again, who if they had dressed like Kaepernick or did the Black Power fist, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, but whose ultimate fault is it always?
Donald Trump.
Of course, because the state senator who represents this area, John Erpenbach, came out and said, unfortunately, based on what these students see coming from the White House, some of them may believe what they have done is acceptable. And
notice what it is. So according to this idiot Democrat senator, it's Nazism. Despite all the disavowals, despite all the logical arguments for what happened, it's Nazism. And if it's Nazism, it has to be Trump. Because Donald Trump is parading around the White House like this, right? That Trump and his cabinet is lined up sending Nazi messages to the people. That's the narrative that the mainstream media has stuck to. That's the narrative that many young kids believe. That's the narrative that progressives use. You need Nazis, progressives, way more than the Nazis need each other. You need them. Without them, you have no argument or justification for the hysterical overreactions that drive your politics and your fundraising.
Yeah, and well, one of the other things that the progressives like to do is just say that there are a million different genders. And we have a school district who has basically done the same thing, except they're going against some of the things that they've passed in the past. So tomorrow, Fairfax County Public Schools is hosting a workshop called Jack's Brain, Jill's Brain, Gender Differences and Why They Matter. So they're hosting this little workshop that says, yes, there are boys and there are girls and they work differently. However, the same school district, which is the 10th largest school district school system in the nation, it shows that their policies don't align at all with this, because Kathy Ruse, who wrote an article, says that all of what they're doing is contrary to the school board pushing things on the students. Last spring, by a vote of 10-2, the school district pushed through 80 hours of sex ed required for the students. Every reference to human beings having a biological sex of male or female was removed, and children are now taught that sex is assigned at birth and subject to change.
80 hours of mandated sexuality training for your kids. How long does it take sperm and egg to teach sperm and egg? How long does it take to teach gestation? How long does it take? This has nothing to do with that anymore. This is 80 hours of mandated sex ed, during which you are not allowed to argue that there is such a thing as authentic male and female. Right? Or biological sex matters at all. The biological sex and gender are utterly irrelevant here. 80 mandated hours. And you know as well as I do, it's more than 80. That's what's mandated. That's what's the minimum requirement here. That's why people in other states are slipping in to your English classes these goofy lectures, or bringing in drag queens in the name of diversity and career day. This is way more than 80 hours. In other words, they're spending more dedicated time to re-educating, concentration camp-wise, the way your kids think about their own sex and biology than they are focusing on your kids' glaring weaknesses in reading and math comprehension.
And it's just showing the school board will put forth the agenda it wants to put forward. Basically, parents be damned, because when this was happening, when they were pushing for that 80 hours, they had more than 1,000 comments come from different parents, and 83% of those opposed these changes that they actually did put in. And in 2015, the school board had already approved that the girls' bathrooms, the girls' showers, and girls' sports teams, if you identify as a girl, even though you're a boy, you can go right on in.
And the last thing that needs to be pointed out here is that so the school is really robbing Peter to pay Paul. The traditional way this has been handled is to pretend there's no difference between boys and girls, to pretend that biology itself isn't true. But this school seems to argue, right, that despite the fact that there are clear biological differences between men and women, serious differences, our policy is we're going to force girls into boys' locker rooms, and we're going to force boys into girls' locker rooms. So you see how emboldened this progressive movement is. No longer are they trying to deflect from the realities of biology. They're now willing to cite them and say, tough on you. There may be significant developmental differences between boys and girls, serious psychological and emotional differences between boys and girls, but screw you. If a little boy wants into a little girl's bathroom, nothing you can do to stop it. So that just shows you that we've taken one step forward now. Started by denying biological difference, now affirming it and saying, we don't give a damn. We're going to teach your kids what we want anyway.
That's exactly what's happening. Back onto the college campus at UC Berkeley, it just continues to be an awful university and showing its true intolerance. A student senator named Isabella Chow is being harassed to resign from their student Senate that they have because she didn't vote against. She simply abstained, meaning she could not vote for or against a October 31st resolution that would oppose the recent Title IX changes that were proposed by President Trump, basically limiting gender to male, female. And because she's a Christian, she said, it doesn't represent my views. I am not allowed to vote on this. So she didn't vote no, she just abstained, and now they're calling for her head.
Yeah, so you have a young Asian American woman, right? A clear-cut minority on a campus, Berkeley, that discriminates against Asians because there are too many of them in their admissions policies. So I would argue to this young woman, Berkeley may not be the place for you. They discriminate people like you because you are too smart. You skew the curve. You are overrepresented because of your academic achievement. And now you are a Asian American female Christian on this board, this council. And rather than vote against it, which your conscience says you should, right? You're basically saying, Ms. Chow, that you disagree with this policy, that you do believe as a Christian that gender and biological sex are actual things. They're not just constructs. But in the goodness of your heart, rather than vote no, as perhaps your conscience should have led you to, you just simply said, I'm not going to vote at all. I'm going to abstain. And for that, you are being called a racist. And for that, you are being called a bigot and a homophobe and a transphobe. For that, they're telling you, your peers at Berkeley, that you should not be allowed to serve in student government, that your views are abhorrent, and hateful. They are hate crimes. You just abstained from a vote and you're guilty of a hate crime. No longer is it okay just to refuse to participate in leftist lunacy unless you are 100% backing it. You are a racist that must be driven off a campus. Good for you. Good for you for defending your principles. Good for you for standing up to them. I wish you had voted no, because no is what you wanted to vote. No is clearly what your heart told you to vote. Understand this. Berkeley will learn no lessons from this. Berkeley has already decided that they will discriminate, not just against smart Asian Americans, but against Christians. Strike two for you, honey, right? You've got 2 strikes walking on that campus. You're not teaching Berkeley anything. So in the future, don't moderate your beliefs by abstaining. Vote no, number 1. Number 2, maybe it's time, because Berkeley won't learn anything, but you can learn something. Learn that these progressive leftists are not tolerant, they are not open-minded, they are not accepting. They are themselves fascists. Fascists who insist it's not enough for you to abstain, that you have to sanction everything we put before you. That's not government. That's not good civic government. It's not good college government. It's certainly not good government according to the Constitution. Learn that lesson. Either find a better school or fight back more definitively than you have, because those are the only 2 options that you have. Berkeley will learn nothing. Maybe you learn something.
Yeah, I think the way she phrased it, she actually put forth it was a 5-paragraph essay, so I'm sure none of the students were able to understand what she wrote. But she actually explained her reasoning for abstaining from the vote before she gave the vote itself. And she wanted to put that into the student newspaper, and they said that she was not allowed to because it's homophobic and transphobic.
Look, you have a member of student government and a duly elected member of student government who wants to explain why she did something they say is racist, and they won't publish it because saying so is racist.
It's homophobic and transphobic.
Homophobic and transphobic. That, my friends, is the definition of fascism. You cannot more accurately illustrate fascist operations than what just happened there.
All right. I want to give props to a student who actually was able to write a nice op-ed for once in a campus newspaper. We have the Rocky Mountain Collegian campus newspaper. It's at Colorado State University. And student columnist Katrina Levy explained that apparently now, in addition to Asians already being discriminated against, saying long time no see is a derogatory term towards Asians. She said in a meeting with Zahra El Saloom, the director of diversity and inclusion, red flag right there, at Associated Students of Colorado State University, she showed me an entire packet of words and phrases that were deemed non-inclusive. One of these phrases was long time no see, which is viewed as derogatory towards those of Asian descent. Now, coming from my countryside background, if I haven't seen you in a while, I'll be, hey, long time no see. Never knew that was derogatory.
This is how extremely censorious, how extreme the movement to censor speech has gotten. Long time no see. That is a perfectly legitimate English construction. Long time no see. You can punctuate it a couple of different ways. It makes perfect sense. It's kind of almost Hemingway-ish in its succinctness. But because oftentimes Asian American immigrants, as they're trying to struggle to learn English, will speak in choppy, broken sentences, right? Right? You can turn that into, not because of what it says, not because of what the words mean, not because of how you're using it, but because of some obscure speech pattern that comes from trying to learn English, particularly if you come from an Asian background. That's why we're going to censor this now. So, you think about it. The stereotypes, right? Me love you long time, right? Me love you long time from the Vietnam movie. That kind of choppy English construction, right, can be used to mock Asians. And so long time no see, which is, again, a perfectly valid English construction and syntax, has to go because somebody might be offended. What you're doing is you are not protecting the feelings of Asian Americans. You are punishing Americans. You are punishing English speakers to the degree that their language doesn't make other people comfortable. Let that sink in for a second. Our language, which is part of our heritage and our culture, our language in which we do business, in which we vote, in which our politicians speak, in which our founding documents were written, unless our language makes everybody from anywhere else on the planet who comes here comfortable with its locutions and its syntax and its vocabulary and its grammar and its punctuation, unless everybody is happy, then we have to ban those aspects of our language and our culture and our heritage that might be confusing to people or be confused by people. This, my friends, is Orwellian language fascism. Go back to the previous story. That we're going to punish you for doing anything, any gesture, any sign, any symbol, any use of language that somebody can object to, we're going to ban it. Despite the fact that it's perfectly legitimate and its origin and its reasons for being have nothing to do with the kind of racism you racists have put on it yourself.
Yeah, Libby explains a little bit more in her column. She says also the popular term "you guys" was not inclusive of all genders, so you should say y'all. We were told to use the term first year instead of freshman because freshman is not inclusive of all genders. And after getting involved in residential leadership, I was told not to use the word dorms and replace it with residence halls. Apparently, dorm refers to only a place where one sleeps, and residence hall refers to a place where we sleep, eat, study, and participate in social activities.
Social justice activities.
There it is.
So y'all, all right, so you're championing the Confederacy, right? So you don't say, what's the word?
Oh, you can't say you guys.
You can't say you guys. We recommend you say y'all, right? So, okay, good. Well, welcome to championing the Confederate. By your stupid, twisted logic, if I, as an Asian American whose first language is Mandarin Chinese, and I hear the phrase,
you guys? Or y'all.
Y'all, right?
Y'all,
if I'm a Mandarin speaker of Mandarin Chinese, right? And you say, long time no see to me, I think you're mocking me for my locution, right? By that same stupid, twisted, biased, bigoted, racist argument, when you force kids, you suggest to kids to use the phrase y'all instead of you guys, what you are doing is replacing patriarchy with Confederacy. This is like flying the Confederate flag. This is like statues of Robert E. Lee. Bigot, bigot, bigot. And if you think that's stupid and laughable, so is everything else they're doing, right? Somebody once pointed out, some of the stuff is so stupid and so insidious, you can only mock it.
Exactly, and she ends with, a countless amount of words and phrases have been marked with a big red X and defined as non-inclusive. It's gotten to the point where students should carry around a dictionary of words they cannot say.
Let me tell you what, take the word inclusive, which is your mantra. It's like Om, inclusive, Om. It's your religion. You sit around in your hippie sandals and your linen outfits and your unshaven legs and armpits and you chant inclusive, inclusion, inclusion. Take that word and put a red X by it because it no longer means what you think it means. You use the word inclusion to exclude people. You use the word inclusion to exclude all these words that you and your twisted fantasies of social justice imagine are offensive. You're the ones who have twisted the meaning of inclusion to mean exclusion. So you should ban that word and all the things that goes with it because now it's as offensive as y'all should be.
Well, y'all stay tuned for the interview with Dr. Duke and Alex Newman.
Y'all come back now, you hear? Today, we're going to talk about the further erosion of parental rights. We said many times at you and I, Alex, that one of the consequences of federal ed, federalizing education, Common Core and related ideological perspectives is taking away rights from parents. You have a doozy of a story that every mom and dad in America needs to hear. Tell us what happened in Minnesota.
So basically, you had a government school going behind the parent's back to give a child a sex change operation.
So basically, the mom did not want her 17-year-old son to be allowed to transition to a woman. That includes hormonally and in terms of surgery. Unbeknownst to the mom, the school decided that she was an unfit mother and allowed the procedures to take place. The boy was indeed transitioned to a woman, to a girl. And when the mom found out about this, I guess they weren't living together, the mom and the mom and the son at the time?
Right, and I guess the child, the boy, had gone to ask an attorney from some left-wing organization to write a letter saying, you know, we kind of think you're emancipated. And you know, it's interesting because in the first lawsuit, the court acknowledged that the mother's parental rights were intact. Right, the child was not emancipated, so the child was not free to make these sorts of decisions, and yet the school, behind the parents' back, decided to make this decision anyway, as if the child were an adult or were emancipated.
So the mother reacted to this by going to a district court to try to sue, and she was told by the district court that yes indeed, your constitutional parental rights were violated. But we're going to side with the little boy anyway. We're going to side with your son because no real damage was done because your rights were violated. How do you come up with that kind of a decision?
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, what the government has said is, well, it was a worker error and, you know, we're sorry, but hey, we don't bear any responsibility for this. You know, it was a worker error. And that was their defense, a worker error in this case. So, you know, the consequences, of course, are now irreversible, right? You can't go back and undo this procedure. You can't go back and restore the parents' rights. But apparently when the government does these sorts of things, they can often get away with it. And so now it's being reviewed by an appeals court, by a panel of appeals court judges. And we'll have to see what comes down. But the Thomas More Center, the Thomas More Society, a Christian public interest law firm, has now taken up the case, and they're helping the mom in this case. So.
Yeah, well, thank God she is appealing this. We'll see what the three Eighth Circuit judges have to say about it. Who was it that paid for all of this behind the mother's back?
Yeah, I'm assuming it was taxpayers because you have the government school involved, you have the county health system, and some other government officials and authorities. So I assume taxpayers were on the hook for this.
So if you're a 25-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old with cancer can't pay your bills, you can't consult a left-wing activist and simply have the government pay for it. But in the interest of taking underage children and sexually transitioning them against the spoken wishes of the mother, was all sorts of public money for that, evidently, we're led to believe. Yeah,
that's what it seems like. And you know, it's one of those crazy stories that sounds too crazy to be true, but then it is true, and this is what's happening. You hear about, you know, stories where the schools help take the underage girls to go have abortions without consulting their parents or behind their parents' back, and this is just the next logical step, right? They'll take them to have their genitals mutilated under the guise of transitioning to the other sex. It's, you know, it's tragedy.
The real takeaway from all of this is that schools really aren't that interested in what mom and dad think. On so many levels, whether it's teaching kids transgenderism in elementary school, or, as we saw last week, threatening to punish a teacher for not going into a boy's locker room to watch a girl who thinks he's a boy shower, the American public school system has moved into unknown territory here, where they feel absolutely entitled to remodel, literally remodel your children, from the pipes and the plumbing all the way up to what goes on between the ears. If we don't stop this now, there's going to be a lot more psychological and social evisceration of your kids, not just destroying their physical bodies.
So we have a report that came out of Ohio University that they were considering a workout room that would be designated for minority students. Now, the student news outlet, The New Political, reported that Gigi Sekubin, the university's first ever vice president of diversity and inclusion, made the suggestion at a recent student senate meeting. Supposedly, Sekubin mentioned a plan to turn one of the racquetball courts at the Ping Recreation Center into a private workout room for minorities, sexual assault survivors, or people with special religious accommodations. Now, Sekubin said not a lot of people play racquetball, so there's tons of racquetball space that they could use, that they could recondition and make this happen. The original story said it would just be for these minority students, but they have come out now and said that, well, everyone could use it.
Well, because of the blowback.
Yeah.
And so Gigi, who is a vice president of diversity and inclusion. There you go. Okay. You hire somebody and you pay them, I bet she makes well over $150,000 a year.
And she just started this summer, so she was probably looking for a project to do, right. Wanted to show that she could do something.
This person has nothing to give the university other than more special social justice stuff, right? You're hiring yet another social justice executive whose job it is not to advance the educational mission of the college. It's not to make better mathematicians or English professors or English teachers. It is simply to gerrymander the school. So she decides she could take a racquetball court. And what I love is the three organizations, the groups, right? Ethnic minorities, sexual assault survivors, and alternative religious people, right? In other words, anybody but Christians is what that means. So, okay, so that means it's open to Jews and Muslims. They can work out together, number one. And so if you happen to be a white guy who was sexually assaulted, you're allowed in. So the sexually assaulted white guy, simply by the virtue of having been sexually assaulted, is now somehow default woke. And therefore, if I'm an African American using that gym and I see a white guy who 20 years ago was molested by a priest, why are you in my gym, right? And so what you see here is it's a complete it's a throw darts at a board kind of thing, right? Let's just pick some groups that we consider to be minority groups, and in a mishmash lump them all together. Oh, and if Muslim men, alternative religions, are using this, and you have female survivors of rape, are you in their workout shorts in this room? But none of this is ever thought out, right? This is just playing Russian roulette with diversity issues, right? And what happened? The blowback was so intense that now they have to say, well, even though we would like this space to be for those people, we really, translation, constitutionally can't keep other people out of it.
Yeah, so we can allow the other people in, but when the College Fix they found the story, and so they sent a reporter on it, the university would not confirm or deny that these plans are going to be moving forward. There's going to be something happening in this upcoming spring. We'll see what these plans are.
We will not confirm nor deny the possibility that Germany is at war with France. We will not confirm it. Right. It's like they got tasked, the Soviet news agency running the university, right? We will not confirm and we will not deny. Something's coming down the road. Again, Gigi, when you hire Gigi to be a vice president of diversity and inclusion and affirmative action, guess what you're going to get? More of this. I'm surprised they don't take 3 separate racquetball courts across campus and dedicate one to black kids, one to sexual violence survivors, and one to non-Christians, right?
But then, I mean, does that mean if you fall into all those categories, do you work out here one day and the next day you go to this one? Or like, how does that work?
And as been the theme of this whole show, the more they use the word inclusive, the more what they really mean is radical exclusion. Right? Radically excluding ideas, words, people, even people from sharing spaces. Got to have dorms that are separated, got to have eating facilities that are separated, got to have studies majors and graduation ceremonies and gymnasiums that are separate, all in the name of, you got it, including.
Well, yeah, and Stanford University did this exact same thing where they wanted, this was like last year, I think it was, where they wanted a women's only lifting hours because, they felt a little insecure having the men around.
And another school wanted women's only swimming hours, right? So you could swim in your burqa, right?
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to the same argument here. We are going to include everybody all the time by excluding most people most of the time. That's your mantra. $150, $75, $200,000 for Gigi to implement these policies on your campuses with your student tuition dollars and state money, right? Professional activists, social justice activists, taking a lot of public money to turn your schools into separate but not equal places, to segregate your campuses, and to exclude people in the name of inclusion. Welcome to America 2018.
Well, we here at the Dr. Duke Show like to include everyone, and we encourage everyone to go to drdukeshow.com. Make sure you listen to the podcast version of today's Dr. Duke Show. Subscribe. And hey, while you're there, you might as well leave us a nice 5-star review because Dr. Duke likes happy thoughts.
And that does it for us this week on the Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you heard, share the podcast with your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie, and we'll see you next week.